Welcome to Chess on the Brain with National Master David Bennett. So basically, I'm going to redo a video where I had an issue with the audio. So I want to begin officially, or now hopefully doing it the right way, my series on analyzing a chess position. So that's something that's obviously really important to chess success, is to be able to take a position, pick it apart. I really like Jeremy Silman's technique from how to reassess your chess. So I'll kind of touch on that a little bit in terms of looking at the imbalances. I think it's just a useful way to figure out what's going on, and come up with a plan, or figure out what needs to be done in that position. Now there's another thing which I don't know which chess author talks about this, but it's just something I noticed that comes up a lot. It's pretty basic, but it's this mix of calculation and positional judgments. That's really the theme of this position that I'm going to analyze, which was from the Virginia State Championship. I'm a recent resident of Virginia, so I played in a championship. And after a couple of not so good games, I started a winning streak. So this was the first game of the winning streak, and this was a critical position. Now, how do you know it's a critical position? Well, you see that White just played bishop to d1. I'm playing as black here, and they're attacking the knight on a4. So you have a piece under attack. It's kind of like things are just sort of reaching a breaking point here, because either you go through with your attack, you've got a rook that penetrated to the second rank, attacking laterally, you've got this pressure on the f-file against the bishop and the knight indirectly through here. So you have a lot of pressure on the position. The knight is guarding this and also attacking c3. So you either go through with it or you play knight b6. I mean, you have to defend your knight, do something with your knight since it's under attack. So we kind of get a sense that it's a critical position or maybe a tactical situation. Also, what are some other indicators of a tactical situation? Well, basically, the bread and butter of tactics are loose pieces and exposed kings. Loose piece, loose king, things like that. So obviously in White's position, we have an exposed king. It can easily be checked on the g file. And we also have loose pieces. Well, we have a bishop. It's only guarded by a queen. The knight is guarded by a bishop and a queen. And we also, just in terms of attacking pieces, we have a lot of attacking pieces, right? We have a rook attacking on the second rank. Again, these pieces are all pretty aggressive here. And maybe this one. This guy can maybe come to the b file and back up the other rook. But we definitely have a lot of prospects here. Now, as for our opponent, for White, okay, the bishop's probably the most, salient piece, or maybe sticking his head out here because he's kind of vulnerable. But I mean, he can go to g5 or e5, so we're probably gonna have to look at that in any line we consider. And obviously the bishop on d1, which is kind of, looks like it went back to go to sleep, but it is actually doing something. It went back, one step back, and maybe if he's lucky, 3 steps forward diagonally to the knight. But obviously we're not just going to drop the knight for nothing. But this is the position we begin with, so it's clearly tactical. But okay, we're going to begin to look at the tactics. But really, the key here is once we look at tactics, we're going to have to do some positional evaluation. So again, that's something that's really important, because a lot of times, we learn to calculate for checkmate or for material gain, which is fine because we have to get good at calculation. We have to know those situations. Just had a little debate about that on Twitter, actually, different philosophies on that. But basically, yeah, you have to know that stuff, of course. But at the same time, you have to know your positional chess too. So actually, I've been talking about Reshevsky recently, and Reshevsky is really good at blending the dynamic play with the static play. He can gain that positional advantage, but he knows, like Fischer said, tactics flow from a superior position. So he knows he gains the superior position, and he knows how to exploit it too. So this is all about that mix. And again, as I mentioned in the title, under the description, basically this is like it's like a soft skill of chess, right? You have your soft skills in the workplace. This is your soft skill of chess. It's kind of that mix between tactics and positional chess, which is so important. So at the end of a line, you don't see a checkmate, but you might see some material imbalance, and you have to evaluate that. So that's where the tactics give you very good visualization. They should help with your visualization. So that's where you visualize the end of the position, or like you look at the calculation tree at one node, one of the nodes at the end of your tree in a particular line, you see this position. You have like a snapshot of what it might look like. Then you combine that with your understanding of chess theory, your your intuition, your past games you've had, things like that, which informs your intuition, and you make a decision. So anyway, let's jump into this. So what should black do here? Black to play, and not necessarily to win, just what's the best move. So maybe take a pause and think about, pause the video, think about what should you do here with the black pieces, and then think about it, and come back with some idea of how you'd approach it, and we'll dig into it a little bit more. So if we're thinking, another thing someone talks about is target awareness. If we're thinking in terms of target awareness, from a structural perspective, pawn's the soul of chess. So from a structural perspective, c3 is definitely a target. And if that goes, d4 might go as well. And another target, of course, as we mentioned, the f-file pieces, and maybe even up to the f-pawn. I mean, we got a lot of pressure bearing down on the f-file and on the second rank. So it's really a nice geometry going on here. So pressure on the third rank, these squares, the second rank, and the fourth rank. So it's very uncomfortable for white. But again, it's a breaking point, but we have to exploit this. We have to take advantage of this moment. So how do we do it? Well, the key is you have to look for forcing moves. It may look crazy sometimes, like that famous Lasker game where he drops his queen d8, sacks his queen, but he gets a double check. Well, when you see the follow-up, it makes sense. So first of all, look at any forcing move. It might be bishop takes f3. It might even be rook takes f2. That doesn't seem to do anything here, but you look at it. At least it might be a calculation tree, or it might just be a shrub. Okay, a shrub is one candidate move doesn't really go anywhere. Okay, at least we can eliminate that. We do the process of elimination. We eliminate what doesn't work. That's just as important. And then we whittle it down. We get to what works. So bishop takes f3 is definitely a candidate move. Where would that lead us? Bishop takes. Well, this is hanging. They could either choose to just take this one, or they could take back with the queen or the bishop. I mean, even if queen takes, I don't see too much here. There might be something. There might be something. Because, well, we clearly see the pressure on here and the desire to pull the queen away from the bishop's defense on f4. So knight takes c3, and that would actually solve our problem of the knight hanging. So that's really begging to be played. Well, maybe we can take here, they could take back, then we take on c3. So for example, say we did take, and that would be if they don't take on a4, that's another branch. But if they do this, well, that looks tempting. But what's the problem? Well, we just hung the b2 rook at the end of the line. So we're down a whole rook, right? 3 against 4 pieces, not including kings, so that's not good. Okay. Let's look at some other move orders. And again, well, we don't have to look at the other line because we already know they have a winning move. If we take an f3, it doesn't look good. Okay, what about just taking immediately? Again, it may look like we lose the rook again because the rook's going to be loose. That's our own loose piece, right? That our opponent can exploit, possibly, or maybe not, depending on how well we calculate. So let's do this without making the moves. It's good to work that, whatever that part of your brain is that visualizes chess moves. So knight takes c3. Now, okay, we've dealt with that problem on a4. So we pretty much, if they don't want to just drop that pawn, because we can take and either take on d1 or just come to e4 with the great game. We're already up a pawn. We'll be up 2 pawns, pretty much winning. So they would have to take back. Okay, now this is what makes things interesting, because since we haven't taken on f3 yet, we've withheld that. So in this position, by taking on f4, what's going to be hanging? Well, the rook's hanging, but so is the knight. Now we may just look at it and say, well, we're going to lose the exchange. Okay, it's important to always, follow the line out to its conclusion. So if we take on c3, they take on c3. We take on f4, they take on b2, we take on f3. Okay, well, what's the result of that? Materially, anyway. Materially, we are gaining a pawn. They are gaining a knight. We're gaining a bishop. They're gaining a rook. We're gaining a knight. And if they want to, they could gain the bishop, and then we gain the bishop. So, those we cancel out. But let's just look at the main line, which would be taking, that would be a knight and a bishop and a pawn. So we would get 3, 6, or we can just cancel out really. We can go knight for knight, and we can go bishop for rook. So we're sacking an exchange for a pawn, right? It comes down to, since the knight, it's going to come down to these ones. It's going to come down to the bishop for the this, and it's going to be this for this. So yeah, basically the bishop for the rook, and we get the pawn too. So exchange for a pawn, but we're already up a pawn. So maybe we can afford to do that. I mean, generally speaking, if you get 2 pawns for exchange, that's really good in a lot of cases. So we're at parity materially. It's equal. We would have 3 for the piece, 3 for the knight, plus 2, so 5 for 5, right? And really what it comes down to then is our positional evaluation. So again, this is where we need to visualize, right? Now I'm actually going to go, just to make it a little easier on us, I'm going to go to that position so we can flip to what that would look like. This is the kind of position we would get after making that exchange sacrifice. So let's play through it though. So we would have knight, just to show you the line. Knight takes c3, and queen takes c3, queen takes f4, queen takes b2. So you can see the logic of the line, right? It's all pretty much forced. Again, the only wild card is that bishop on f4 earlier on. We'll take a look at that. But and then pretty much they actually have to take, because this is a mate threat, check and mate. So they would take, we would take, and then we get something like this. Now, so this is, but see, this is what we'd have to see in our head, something like this. The resulting structure. Oh, wait a second. No, my bad. What are we missing here? Something. Oh, the bishop should be gone. Yeah, and the rook should be gone. Okay. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to go like this. So the position should be, after all this happens, that the bishop on f1 is gone. Throw that out. And this, I think it would be, yeah, there was a rook on the rook ended up on the b line, I think. Yeah, so let's flip that, black to play. Okay, so go back to analysis board. That should be it, yeah. So this is the kind of position that you need to have in your mind. So you need to accurately calculate, and then you arrive at this, in this sort of nebulous, not a very clear situation that arises. So basically, you need to have this in your mind, do some very clear, well, it says, okay, you can see that the computer thinks it's already winning for black, but you need to do some really clear positional evaluation with this snapshot in your mind, and that's the trick, right? That's the calculation. So the calculation part is that you get to here from here, with when all the chaos is going on, things are hanging, you have to calculate, pierce the fog of war, which is what you need to do all the time, or in any complex position, or even a seemingly innocent, in a seemingly straightforward position. You always have to pierce that fog of war, because there's always some complexity. But here there's a lot of complexity, right? And then get to this, where it's still complex, but it's a boiled down version, right? So now we see the pure exchange sacrifice. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versus 4. And we have the knight for the rook for rook, right? Queen for queen. So it's equal material, but really we're looking at it in terms of knight and 2 pawns for rook. But equal material. Now you have to evaluate this position. That's really important. Once you've done this line, you say, you know what, I'm thinking about doing it. It's going to be exchange sacrifice. It looks interesting, and my alternative is to retreat. Not to say you can't retreat, but again, then they're just going to start kind of counterattacking you, and you want to seize this moment. Oh, and by the way, the other line, what would it have been? It would have been some bishop move, but the beauty of the position is that the bishop hangs on d1, and then the queen's going to hang after that. So this stuff doesn't work. If they try to attack the queen, I mean, first of all, you could, I guess you could move the queen, but no, you just take. You just know that you get a piece, right? You get a bishop, they get a queen, you get a queen. Actually, that's very good, right? Because now, what do we have? We have 3 versus 2. We just won a piece. So, yeah, because we picked up a bishop and a queen in our journey. They only got a queen, and now we both have a piece hanging. So if they run, we run. Actually, we don't just run; we fork. We fork the 2 rooks by going to c2. So if they run, that's just losing completely. Are they just down a whole rook? Or, well, I guess they can attack a rook, but and the bishop's attacking the knight as well. Yeah. So it's terrible. It's a terrible position. And also, if they choose to take, which is probably the only move, now you just have a piece. You just free bishop and and what, a pawn? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, 2 pawns. And you're threatening to just take the knight and then pick up the pawn, and now you're up another pawn, and that's the end of it. Okay, end game technique, but you're up like 5 points, so it may as well be up a rook. Okay, but that's just to show you. So, but again, like really the key thing here is to visualize this position from this position. Now it seems a little daunting maybe, but that's why it is really important to be a great calculator, and that's why you do those very concrete tactics, on whatever chess site you like to do, whether it's here, chess.com, or I think chesstempo.com. I've done that, and that's a good site too, and you get endgame training on there as well. But it's important to have those tactics down, mostly so that you can, you don't miss anything. Like there's no wild card like bishop here doesn't work. You realize that knight takes c3. You actually look at that move. You are hanging a knight, but you realize that because of these loose pieces, it works out. It's an exchange sacrifice for 2 pawns at the end of the day, or in this case, the line is for a pawn, but you already have a pawn, so you can have 2 pawns. But again, it's about that positional evaluation when you get here. So now let's evaluate. It's the second position essentially, but it's based on the first position, right? This is that node, right? If you make a tree of a calculation tree, which Kotov talks about, and how to think like a grandmaster. So you're making that tree. You say, okay, if I go here, they're kind of like game theory too. I go here, they go here, I go here, they go here, and you're making lines in your mind. And I think it's an efficient way to do it. Then you arrive at the end of that tree of the main line we just looked at. We arrive at, actually the queen ended up going back, and the queen would have been, I think, on b. Yeah, went to c3. This queen got attacked by the rook, went back to f6. This was actually the position that we arrived at in the game. But again, I had to evaluate this before it happened, right? So it's evaluation of current position and evaluation of a potential position, which is really essential. Whether it's in something, like a concrete line like this, or maybe a lot of times it's 2 movers. Most of the time in chess, you're only looking like, I think Botvinnik said that, you're usually only looking like 2 moves ahead in most positions. You don't have to calculate that deeply. It's very rare that you have to calculate like 5 or 10 moves, maybe in a forcing line, like a checkmate line, just to make sure it works. But usually it's just a couple moves, 2 or 3 moves ahead. And there, you just have to have an idea. What is that position going to look like? Create those snapshots in your mind and evaluate them accurately. Anyway, I'm beating it over the head now. So we have the pressure on d4, right? Let's just break this down. That's the most obvious thing here. Pressure on d4 along with the pawn. Pass pawn protected by the d pawns. We call it protected pass pawn. And the queen is basically babysitting that. And knights are the ones who generally babysit pawns. Or if you already had that pawn on c3, if it were still there, that would be holding off the pawn. But yeah, so now the queen is functioning as a blockader, which it doesn't want to do, because it's, it wants to be doing much grander things than that. And you have a rook, which is consigned to the defense of the d-pawn, which it also doesn't want to do. So we've already got 2 pieces tied down, and then we have an artificially active rook on e3. I mean, really, is it going to checkmate you by going to g3? Well, you can do, if you really want to, you can go 97 to f5, still hitting the pawn, and hitting the rook if it gets there, and guarding g7. Or maybe you could do like g6, king g7, maybe even get this way and start attacking here. I mean, I don't know if black is going to achieve a direct kingside attack, but this is, once you get the knight there, it's not out of the question. I mean, you might even come here, and now you're looking at f3, and it's looking pretty bad. So the knight there, the queen there, combined with the rook swing, or maybe if the rook gets in later, this way or this way, we're definitely looking at into the enemy territory. So, yeah, this is looking good. First of all, again, the material balance is good, and look at the pawn structure. If we just look at the pawns, that's the pawn structure, right? Oh, my bad. I messed that one up too. Okay, that pawn's supposed to be here. Well, either way, it's bad, right? But anyway, you get the idea, right? We're up 2 pawns, and all of white's pawns. Okay, pretend that pawn's there. We can change. I'll change it. I'll just to be accurate. That should be on d4, of course. So let's just move that. Okay, there we go. Okay, we'll look at it from our perspective since we're playing with black. All right. But the pawn structure is terrible. Okay, we talk about pawn islands. Pawn islands are not good islands. You don't want to have too many. Why not? Because each one can be attacked. Well, technically, this is one big pawn island. The only place it could really be attacked is at the base. But as long as you don't lose that base, every other pawn is guarded, and that's a nice pawn chain. Not to brag or anything, but just objectively, it is a really cool pawn chain. So it ended up working out by pushing, which was a little risky in the game because I locked up the position and let them get a kingside attack. But fortunately, it worked out. Meanwhile, this is a target. This is a target. That's a target. I mean, everything's a target. So especially with a few pieces on the board and the absence of the G pawn here, when we have more pieces, even here, it's still a critical factor in terms of king safety. So there's another imbalance, king safety. Well, our king is way safer than our opponent's king. In terms of control of open lines, another imbalance. Who has the lines? Well, the B file, that's a nice line. They can't really challenge it. And activity of their pieces, again, all they really got is that rook up, a little rooklet. But again, I think it's artificial is the way I describe it because it doesn't really attack anything. It can make a one mover, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't coordinate with the rest of the army. And notice that their D pawn is actually, might not even want it yet because by taking it, you'd open up the queen. Well, we do it when we're ready. In the game, the knight came in, invaded here and here. That was good. But yeah, they're just tied down. They've got weak pawns everywhere. So again, pawn's the soul of chess. It keeps coming back to that pawn structure. And yeah, what do? I mean, in terms of the plan, white there's no weaknesses that you can get at. Maybe this is even guarded by the knight. These are, again, the base of the pawn chain can't be effectively attacked. The knight you can either ramp up the attack here or just keep pressure, or you can shift here easily and going for the king side. In the game, in this position, well, sure, this is, what happened. Actually, I thought for a while, because it was after the 40th move, so we had an extra hour in this tournament for sudden death. And I thought for a while, and okay, now here's again, tactics combined with positional judgment, or kind of endgame judgment, in terms of which pieces do you want, what structure do you want, and in turn, the pieces kind of correspond with that structure. Well, I decided to play this move. It was because I wanted to actually, well, this rook is guarding the pawn, and again, we have the tactic of going here and taking. When we take, we hit this one. So as it turned out, once we got here, I played this, and he just took it, which I was fine with. So it ended up just going like this. And actually, he played. I guess he didn't want to go here because